This is the strong Armenian Grandmaster Martirosyan against Alireza Firouzja, formerly of Iran, now France. It's the World Rapid 2021. Let's see what happened here. So we had d4 on the board, knight f6 from Alireza, c4, g6, and now the most common move is knight c3 to prepare pawn to e4. But here we have knight to f3, so not going after the e4 big center idea, but going for a fianchetto variation, which we now see. So castles from Alireza, bishop g2, and now because white's not committed with the e4 move, Alireza goes pawn d5, going in for a Grunfeld pawn structure, not going pawn d6, the King's Indian structure. He played a lot of that in his youth. So takes on d5 now played, knight takes, and where this is a bit subtly different to the normal Grunfeld structures is there's no knight on c3 here. So if you go e4, you're not going to get all this kind of stuff changing the pawn structure. So instead castles was played, and now Alireza already drops that knight back. It preempts a later e4 and also looks at this c4 square, which we'll see starts to become sensitive. So now we had knight c3, knight c6 played, and this is a good move, immediately pressuring the center. You don't want to be going c5 in these positions, different kind of pawn structure, and white kicks on with d5. Now we have knight to a5 here. So you're giving white this central space. It's a very risky way to play for black, unless you know what you're doing, which Alireza does. And the whole idea is you're coming into c4 to pressure b2 and this whole kind of diagonal here. So queen c2 was now played. There are different moves here. I mean, e4 looks very logical to bolster the center. c6 could be played and the game goes on. Bishop f4, bishop g5, two of the main moves there, just developing pieces. But we didn't have that one. We had queen c2 instead. So this gives a pawn, which Alireza takes. But how risky is it snapping off that pawn? Because rook d1 then comes, pinning that knight, c6 defends, pawn e4 attacks, and are you not literally just losing a piece here due to the pin? Well, this is where Alireza uncorks his great preparation here, because I'm sure this was prep. It is a theoretical position. He plays knight to b4, so it counterattacks on the white queen here. Now, white could take on the back rank here, but then you're a bit worse. Now we have takes here, takes on f8 with check, king takes, you want to leave the bishop on this diagonal, and now after the rook moves, different moves that black could play to keep advantage. There's knight a3 to then weaken the knight on c3 from the bishop, bishop g4 is a good one, etc. So black's a bit ahead if you actually swap the queens here. So that's why queen a4 was played, and now how are you defending these two threats? The queen's hitting your knight, and the rook is actually then hitting the queen. Well, queen b6 looks the most obvious, and it is a playable move, but then white's just a little bit better here. For example, pawn to e5 can come, blunting that dark square bishop, and white's a bit better, not going too deep there. But Alireza didn't play that one. Again, he's excellently prepared, such a tactical genius. He goes pawn to b5 here, more counter-attacking against the white queen. Again, what happens if you take? Well, it is a playable variation. Black takes on a4, currently a pawn ahead, but then after takes with check, king takes, knight takes, white does recoup the pawn, but after knight c4, we can see there's a lot of pressure against this pawn, coming down the diagonal. Knight d3 could be coming, so it's a bit uncomfortable for white. Black's a little bit better. Instead, though, we had queen takes on b4, but this is actually an exchange sack, as we'll see. So white's currently a piece up. How would you play as black here to keep the game going? Somehow you need to get a piece back right. So what's the actual play? What's the tactic? So the move that Alireza plays here is bishop takes on c3. An unusual idea because you don't normally want to give up that prized dark squared bishop, doing a good job around your king. So the idea is that you hit this queen, but also now the queen hits the rook because the knight no longer defends it. So we saw queen takes on c3 played, but actually rook takes on d8 was the best move. Then Alireza would take, we'd have a line like this, bishop h6 check, hits the king, king e8, and this is roughly level here, chances for both sides. e5 should come at the right moment. Some point you want to open up this bishop down the diagonal. But okay, here we had a misstep. Queen takes on c3 played. So now Alireza, he picks up an exchange with check. Now we see the knight blocking here, not the bishop, which is kind of the more common way, but knight e1 played, best move, and this now sets up bishop f3 ideas to kick out the black queen from the back rank. But again, this is so tactical. There's only one move to keep black in the game here, because the thing is, white is threatening to go bishop h6, threatening mate, also hitting the rook, and once you go bishop h6, well, the rook's then attacking the queen here, so you'd have a double threat, big problem. So how do you parry all of these threats at the same time? It's really not easy to do, because say you go f6, for example, block that one out, well then the queen can take on a5 as well. That's the other issue. You've got a piece attacked. So many problems. How do you figure them all out? Well, here's the move. Now you go pawn to b4. Just beautiful, because if you go bishop h6 now, well, we chop the queen here. Black's miles ahead in terms of how they're doing. So it forces the queen to capture that b pawn and also stick with the knight. You know, black could take there with check if you're not careful. But now knight b7. Alireza saves that piece that's attacked on a5, and now there's no bishop h6 stuff, because the queen's not on c3, you're not threatening mate. So black can simply take the rook and is doing really well, of course. So we didn't have that one played. After knight to b7, now we had bishop f3, so kicking the queen out. But again, Alireza doesn't move the queen here, just really tactically astute. He goes pawn to c5, more counterattack, and after the queen moves back, then he goes queen d4. This is his idea, and now he's basically forcing these queens off the board in a moment. So the queen drops back. You don't want to start swapping material when you're down in exchange. Alireza develops this bishop to e6, bishop e3, and now we had queen c4. And white just can't avoid the exchange. If you come to e2, well, we can swap off. If you come to the d file, well, then the rook hits, and you've got to move the queen somewhere away, and so then the queens are coming off. So captures was played, bishop recaptures, and now e5, opening this light squared bishop. So we had rook a b8 defending, b3 kicked the bishop back. It could come to e6, another good square, but Alireza comes back to a6 to overprotect this knight, and now bishop g5 started to put this pressure on the king side here. So rook e8 was played, defending that pawn, but it runs into bishop c6. Now what's the plan? Well, Alireza slides again, hits that one, and again he's just constantly ahead on the tactics. No time to take or you lose your bishop. If you take here, well then we take with the rook, defend the pawn. So we had bishop d7 hitting that rook, it came to c7, and again you're attacking, also laterally defending this one. So e6 was played, nice move, trying to break open that king. Now the best move here was f6, but I can understand why Alireza didn't play this. Bishop f4, knight d6, something like this, because you leave white with this thorn pawn in the position and your king just looks a little bit boxed in, a bit uncomfortable, especially if your time is getting down. So Alireza took on e6 here. Now the bishop recaptured with check, king g7, bishop f4 skewers the rooks, but knight d6 covers. Now we had the check, king f8, and now the knight came to f3. Although these bishops look nice, cutting down here and everything, there's just not enough firepower in the white attack. So another piece comes looking to join the party. Alireza blocks that jump, and now knight h4, hitting the new weakness of the last move. How do you defend that one? Well, bishop d3 comes just in time. Yes, there's rook d1, but now another excellent move, just constant initiative from Alireza, pawn to c4. Defends that bishop, and if you capture, which is technically playable, well then rook b1's a really nice idea. Now you're just forcing the exchange of rooks, yet more material coming off the board, favouring the side who's ahead on material. And this position is just winning for black. You know, this pawn should drop soon, etc. So we didn't have takes on c4, king g2 instead, but this isn't the best move. It was tough for white to play at this point, but Alireza can now go g5, drive the knight back, and then bishop e4. And this is a really uncomfortable eternal pin. You can never move that king away or you're dropping your knight. g4 could be coming if this bishop ever moves. Very uncomfortable, and white now goes for some tactics. Takes on d6. But actually, although this wins a pawn, you're just liquidating things down here into a lost endgame, because after Alireza blocks, we see this one. Okay, this one got taken. I was going to say the rook got taken off. This got taken first, then rook d8. Now we saw this one taken with check. King recaptures, and now g4 comes, because you have to stop the pawn from coming here and winning your knight. So Alireza goes h5. Idea being, if you take, we go this one. So instead h3 was played, and now this pawn clamped, and so the king can't move, and the rook's coming here. The whole thing is just horrible for white. Bishop e2, rook f8. You can't actually play many moves here other than shuffle the bishop back and forth or push the pawns. So we saw the pawns pushed, rook f4, push, and we saw the king now march in, and what to do, Alireza just chops here. And here we had a resignation in this position, because if the bishop recaptures, then we chop the pawns, and the king is just going to munch all those pawns, then the a pawn runs, plus you're in exchange ahead, crushing from Alireza. So a tactical genius, maybe even the greatest tactical player of all time. Okay, controversial statement. There was Kasparov, there was Tal, guys like Fischer in their own right, Carlsen even, etc. But, okay, who would win on Puzzle Rush? Who knows? Alireza is just an awesome player and a future world champion in my opinion. So I hope you enjoyed this one. If you want to see another amazing Alireza crush, then click the video on screen, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.